I think I'm losing my mic, but I think I'm loud enough. You folks should hear me anyway. It's a pretty powerful starting point. Now, I had about 4 hours worth of information. Originally, I had about 55, 40 minutes. So I'm going to try my best to unleash the ADHD and talk as fast as I can to get through the parts I think are going to be the most relevant to initiate a conversation. Right. I talk about this topic all the time. What I think is relevant is irrelevant in the sense you folks are the folks that have come here that are looking for information. So I want to open up for Q&A. Again, so I'm going to try to get through some of this material as quickly as possible so we can do that. We can answer some of your guys' questions. But as a starting point, well, who am I? As I mentioned, I'm Stephen Kirby. People refer to me as Kirby. It's nice and simple. I am the founder of the Unchurched Church, which is a all-encompassing DMT church in the Midwest. My expertise is 5-MEO DMT. I am a trauma-informed plant medicine facilitator trained under Atira Tan, a somatic integration coach, and a few other cool-sounding modalities that aren't relevant for this conversation, but those two are. Now, again, I'm not here because I have a famous book. I don't have a TV show. I don't have a podcast with millions of followers. I'm only known to the thousands of people that we've had an opportunity to sit with, hold space with, and serve. And so today I have no ask. I have no sell. If you go to the booth that we have, I've got no wares to peddle. Okay. What I'm here to do today is advocate for the safe, trauma-informed use of this medicine. And again, it's one of the most potent psychedelics on the planet that has the most fast and powerful operation for change, and is now being abused. Okay, so I want to touch base on that. So again, I'm an advocate. I want to bring forward some new ideas. We as an organization, we work with doctors in psychiatry, doctors in psychology, therapists, integration specialists. We've created an entire package so folks that are coming in to deal with trauma are not leaving with additional trauma, especially as it relates to this medicine. Okay. So yes, I just want to bring forward some new ideas on how we collect this medicine or obtain this medicine. We'll talk about collection, how we bring people to this medicine, right? How we actually walk them through ceremony. And then the big word again is integration. This medicine is integrated differently than any other medicine, in my personal opinion, and it needs to be approached differently. So that's who I am. So what I did this week, again, I was slated to talk on Friday. Thank you, universe. Pushed me till today, which gave me an opportunity to meet so many of you folks who came up with questions. So that's what I'm actually going to try to tackle in this 30 minutes before I open up to more Q&A to kind of keep track on what you folks are interested in. So what are we talking about? 5-MEO DMT. Anytime I say 5-MEO DMT, it gets confusing for folks. I know we had a gentleman earlier talking about N-dimethyltryptamine. It gets a little confusing. I know Hamilton Morris was here. Maybe he's still here. Please don't throw a shoe at me if I wreck this, right? But 5-MEO DMT, 5-methoxyl N-dimethyltryptamine. The confusing is traditional DMT, which I'm going to refer to it as, is also called N-dimethyltryptamine. So for tonight's conversation, I'm going to break them into two just to simplify it. We don't refer to it just purely as 5-MEO, even though I may throughout the conversation to keep it short because there's other tryptamines in the 5-MEO class. So depending where you're at, saying 5-MEO could not be enough information. And obviously saying DMT just creates a lot of confusion. So when I'm having conversation with people about DMT, it usually is in the N-dimethyltryptamine or again, traditional DMT. Most folks have done that, understand it's more of a visual experience. It's the DMT that Terrence McKenna and Joe Rogan have popularized. I'm talking about 5-MEO DMT. Now, chemically, they could be more different. And just to break down from an experiential standpoint, it's the 5-HT1A receptors for 5-MEO that's being more impacted versus traditional psychedelics is the 2A receptor. And I think, again, just from my experience, that this is what's causing this dramatic difference in the experience. So when we're having conversations at DMT, this is the most important part of this conversation, I think, because as we continue this conversation outside of this space, which I'm sure that we will, I want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing, because I did have a lot of folks come up and say, I've done DMT. And I'm like, well, what'd you see? The what else? We're talking about a different thing. 5-MEO is just a completely embodied experience, in my opinion. It, to me, if you ask me what it is doing, I feel it resembles a near-death experience. All right, folks are not present. There's not very heavy visuals with it. It is purely an embodied experience, which makes it very difficult to explain to people what's happening with it. But I'm going to try. Now, current research right now, USONA Institute's in the middle of their phase 1 trials. They'll end in September of this year. What makes them interesting is they're using a placebo group. Early indications, early reports are showing that through one inhalation or one dose of this medicine that we're seeing rapid and sustained release and decrease in depression, anxiety, and stress. But interestingly, it's like also this uptick in life satisfaction and mindfulness. I thought that was interesting, mindfulness. So the question is, how is that happening? What is happening? And to be honest, I don't get super excited over the clinical trials. I don't see this working like MDMA or some of the other folks that you've heard talk this weekend about this being in a therapist setting. We try to duplicate that as best we can with the professionals that we utilize. I just don't see this getting to that point. So I see this being underground significantly longer, why I think these conversations are important. What I would propose is this medicine is doing. And it's an interesting one because it is the most powerful experience people could have. It is the most powerful, energetic experience a human could have. That I'll stake my ground on, right? But folks could have that experience and within an hour of that ask, what just happened? Have no idea what the experience meant, how to operate the experience, how to drive the experience, how to land the experience, and how to integrate the experience. But that's not with everybody. It's for a lot of folks, though. And again, that's the importance of not these one-off experiences. To me, what this medicine is doing, it is the highest form of egoic liberation through the form of ego awareness. Immediately when I took that medicine, immediately when I started coming out of the medicine, the first thing I wanted to say to somebody was something that was to be clever. And I recognized that immediately.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. This is extremely exciting.
You want to sound witty.
Period.
For a week
yes,
following it,
I would be
anytime I
honored
had an incident where I was
and
going to
grateful
say
to speak
something
at
that
both
was laced
events.
in ego, which is a good portion of what we
Period.
say, I found out.
I will hop on the computer.
Why am I
and
saying
make
that? I
those
want to chime in.
corrections
A little voice
right
in
now.
my back of my mind kept saying ego,
Period.
ego.
Not
I
sure
had
if you're
lost
still
my
interested
mind.
in my previous talk
It
at the
lasted for
Science of
about 5
Psychedelic
days, and I
Conference in
settled into the
Arizona, but I
experience.
could also attach
What this
that
medicine is doing,
if
pretty.
need be.
This is the power of it. Other
Period.
medicines will elicit an ego death, for
Thank
sure.
you so much
We
again.
facilitate
I'm
IR
extremely
ceremonies.
grateful and
Potentially
excited about
folks
this
do have an ego
opportunity.
death. This is on a different level. This is a consistent ego death. If you did the proper dose 99% of the time, we could elicit this ego death, right? And again, with that, with the death of this ego in that situation, as you start coming back online, you are now hyper aware of your ego as it's trying to restructure you and put you back into place. And that to me is the opportunity where I saw the programming, and most participants, if they're coached through it and are aware of what's happening, are able to see the programming. We've had other folks talk on programming. I don't want to get too deep in it, but to me it was obvious, right? We talk about free will all the time. Free will is a myth, in my opinion. I think it comes with more consciousness, but free will is a pseudo myth. People don't like to hear that because we all think we're in complete control of our actions. Well, I'd test that. Next time you're angry or depressed or frustrated, why don't you reach in that bag of free will you have and sprinkle some of that on it and see if it ends. Okay? It doesn't. So to me, that became obvious. I'm like, wow, why? Programming. So most of you folks already know this. I'll tap on it briefly. For the first 6 to 7 years of your life, your brain's in theta wave. You're in a hypnotic state. I've got a 5.5-year-old daughter. I'm like, oh God, clock's ticking. What am I doing to this person? Right? They're just absorbing the information. It's evolutionary, so they could survive. They're not conscious. They're not thinking their own thoughts necessarily. They're just absorbing the information. That is the program, folks. Here's how you dress. Here's how you show up. Here's how you say to be accepted. Here's what we say. Here's how we do. The moment you become conscious, age 7 or 8, now you're running out that program, and people spend their entire lives defending that program. I meet them all the time. Hi, I'm so-and-so. Here comes the resume. I'm... List. Okay, those are things that you do. Those are things that you have interest in. But you're in there, bud. I see you in there. You may not know you're in there, but you're in there, right? It's the programming. So most folks aren't even aware that they're programmed. The problem with that, too, is through this medicine, if you unravel that program as rapidly as this medicine can work, and they're not prepared, they don't have some form of scaffolding to fall on, they don't have some sort of a fallback plan to what the nature of reality is, you're going to cause damage, okay? This is very heavy with folks that have religious backgrounds, very heavy religious backgrounds. some folks very close to me, very religious backgrounds. Immediately through that ceremony, the thought was, I just met God, and it's not what Matthew, Mark, Luke, John said, right? What do I do with that? Who am I, right? It dissolves their entire foundation of who they are. That's serious, guys. And that's what I'm here today to talk about, because this medicine will change you, but it can also be a negative if used improperly. So ego awareness, I talk too much on it. Somatic release is something that I've heard very few people talk about it. I think this is one of the most potent parts of this medicine. The sacrament is the somatic release. As you go under the medicine, if you take a full dose of this medicine where the default mode network is shut down and you are not present, your body is, for the first time for most humans that I've witnessed, has an opportunity to start working back to homeostasis, right? I'm a Reiki master. I did Reiki for years. This is it. This is the Reiki on a whole nother level. So now you can do it in the space, but what you're witnessing is people literally vibrating the trauma out of their body. And again, because they are finally at this state of peace. They're at a state of peace. And, you know, if anybody knows, in the animal kingdom, the lion chases the gazelle gets to freedom, and it'll start vibrating that extra energy out on the adrenaline out of them. It's called going back to homeostasis. You can see a video on it. They're just vibrating, right? We don't do that. We just shove it down. The guy cuts us off in front of the lion. Shove it down. And then I'll see you vibrating on my floor in my sanctuary, and I'll know what's happening. Now, this is processed in lots of different ways. I don't recommend watching YouTube videos on it. I can't anymore. It can be a phenomenally physical process. To me, at this stage, the process is the process. Don't care what people are doing on the mat. I know what's happening. They're relieving energy. But it looks very traumatic when you're watching that from the outside looking in. And I no longer can watch them because I see a lot of very unsafe things happening in those spaces. So the somatic release, high level, unity consciousness. I am one with everything. That experience of taking every molecule in your body, every atom in your body bursting with this orgasmic, unconditional love, blasting into everything. Sounds like a lot. Kind of is a lot, right? But this presence is knowing that I am everything, right? And I say that to other people like, oh, I did some mushrooms once and I remember that I was one with everything. There's too many I's in that statement to be a 5-MEO experience. The 5-MEO experience, the I is no longer, there's no I, thought I, nothing. You were everything. And that is just a different level. And again, what will that do to change you? Right? What would that do? To me, it immediately ended my fear of death, right? I'm like, oh, well, sign me up for this. This isn't so bad, right? And I find that most people's fears are based around this concept of death, right? So it's helping folks with that piece. But this unity consciousness, again, I am everything. And to me, that has levels to it, guys. I mean, as I'm listening to folks have conversations throughout this, you know, for me, again, I was serving ayahuasca for years. This changed everything. Spirit guides, everything. It takes it to the next level. It is literally a direct portal to source consciousness. Thank you, right? So, yeah. So when I'm talking to folks about visions and their guides, I think that's absolutely beautiful. I don't listen to my guides. I'm going straight to source consciousness. The guides are a little wily. And where are they getting their information from, right? And where do they get their information from? If there's only one source, we're all getting it from the same place. So I like to kind of cut through those middle layers of spirit characters and get right to it, right? Get right to it. So that's unity consciousness, mindfulness. There's a moment in the ceremony where you are enlightened, right? You're not enlightened, but you have this experience of, oh, that's enlightenment. I didn't know what enlightenment was, but I immediately knew in my body this somatic experience of, oh, that's what they're going to the monasteries for 30 years for. Holy crap, that's it. And to me, that was the game changer to me. That embodied experience, not this mind, not something I read, not something that somebody told me that I thought about or constructed. This knowing in my body, in every atom, that is it. That source, that consciousness, that space is home. And the thought to me was, how do I keep going back there? How do I keep going back? And that was the goal. I continue to do this medicine. I don't recommend it. I did over 200 times because integration was not a thing with the organization I was doing this medicine with. The thought to me was keep doing it so that now becomes your baseline. And that was the strategy. Now, as an organization, we're obviously trying to keep people from having to do it that many times, but using these other modalities, parts work, IFS, hypnotherapy, and all these other modalities, breath work. I've heard it all this weekend to maintain that space. We call it microdosing the psychedelic to keep it going. But again, you have this level of mindfulness, which again leads to this spiritual awakening, the near-death experience I talked about, and again, this pause to see the programming. So I love the Usona Institute. Thank you for the research. Yes, it's showing a rapid decrease in sustained in depression, anxiety, and stress, but why? It's all those reasons I just shared with you. And all of that's happening in about 12 minutes. All right? So there's that. History of the use. Okay, I've got about 24 minutes. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it's important to talk about historically where it's at. Again, things that you can Google search. I'd recommend Google searching. Historically, there's a debate over the cultural use of this medicine. I don't get involved in that. It would make sense to me that we're seeing art, paraphernalia, et cetera, that shows that some tribes have an affinity towards this medicine and these animals. I'm going with that. But what I'm more interested in discussing currently is the more recent application of it. 1936, it was synthesized, so people talk about synthetic. I like to refer to it as the pure molecule. Sounds better to people. And it's an accurate statement. The pure molecule versus the traditional. Now, to me, so 36 was in a lab. 1983 was the real watershed moment. Albert Most, I think his real name is Ken Nelson Albert Most, was a pseudonym of the book, Bufo Alvarius, the Psychedelic Toad of the Sonoran Desert. And again, not to keep giving shouts to Hamilton Morris, but I will here. He's got a phenomenal episode on Vice TV. I think it's a 3-part series. Go watch it. It's fascinating. But the point is, this gentleman found the toad, found the Sonoran Desert toad, learned to milk the toad, learned to smoke the toad, created the chemical compounds, created what we have today, what I'm seeing in the modern facilitation of it, where the Bufo toad, now the Sonoran Desert toad, is utilized. Its glands, which are its defense mechanisms, are milked onto glass that is dried, and that medicine is then vaporized. I think just telling folks that we have to milk toad to get that medicine should already be a sign of where this is going, right? And I know that's not a popular conversation here in the Sonoran Desert. So I just want to, this is just my opinion, right? This is just my opinion. Again, I've done this molecule more than most people I know. I was an original facilitator. I did use that. I used Bufo. I believed in it. I was one of the people that argued for the use of it because that was my training, and I was ignorant to do so. As I learned more, we learn more, we do different, right? This medicine, again, 1983, it's only been 40 years. We have to change and evolve the practice of this medicine. Because as an organization, I'm not as interested as facilitating people as much as we're spending more time helping folks that have been traumatized by these experiences, right? So historically, we're at a place now where this Sonoran Desert toad is under extreme stress, right? Its habitat is under stress. When I have buddies online that are like, hey, we're going to go find this toad, we are in bad shape, right? And again, this has been synthesized into a pure molecule. We no longer need the toad to have this experience. I'm not here to debate with people about the spirit of the toad, all the experiences. We can have that afterwards. Again, I looked for a difference. I could not find a difference. I find the pure molecule as effective, if not better, than the Bufo. From a facilitator standpoint, it's actually more effective to utilize it. One of the most difficult parts of an experience is making sure a participant gets the full amount of medicine into their bodies, right? Traditional Bufo only contains about 15 to 20, 25% of actually 5-MEO DMT. The rest are these other alkaloids, okay? Pure molecule, you need about a fifth of that to have that experience. So from a facilitating standpoint, it is significantly easier to serve that molecule. And from a participant standpoint, it's so much easier to take that in. So I'll just make it an invitation. If you are a facilitator and you are using toad, please just consider that there are other ways of doing this. Test it yourself if you have to. Just consider that these toads are under tremendous stress. This medicine is becoming more and more popular. Because I'm in the world of it, I just assume everybody knows what it is. But in the hallway, I talked to so many people that had never heard of it or had barely heard of it. But it's becoming extremely popular. And therefore, again, these toads are under tremendous stress. So please just consider, let's find another avenue for that. So what's happening with this? Again, somebody asked me one of the questions was, what was my experience? I don't want to make this about me in any stretch, but there's some fun to that. And I was hoping that also maybe I could weave in what is actually happening during the experience, what a traditional experience may have looked like, and what we're trying to do today to make it a little bit more trauma informed. I guess my story is like every man's story. I was a financial advisor. I shouldn't say I have a book out. I have a book out on sustainable investing, which is kind of comical right now. So if you're interested in sustainable investing, I've got a pretty good book. So I was a financial advisor for 25 years. Like most, stressed, anxious, long story short, was seeking help. Somebody mentioned ayahuasca was 20 years of therapy in a weekend. Being a stockbroker, I said, well, that's efficient. I'm in. Sign me up. I got that time. Made that happen. It was impactful. Again, my integration story is not good. So you'll hear that. So same as the Bufo, I went down that rabbit hole every month for 2 years. And I could look back now and realize I was just desperate, right? I was desperate for help. And now those are my people, right? I remember sitting in front of my folks when I went for my first Bufo ceremony. And same as I am now, just this fear. But the fear was more of going home the same person I was before coming there. And I was like, I'll die on the dirt here. I'm not going home that person, right? Those are my people now, right? Those are my people. So I did the ayahuasca experience, had a beautiful experience, did that for a couple years. My guru, my shaman was going through some personal struggles. She had mentioned to me, you should do 5-MEO DMT. You should do Bufo. I'm like, okay, well, what'd you see? Well, I didn't see anything. Okay. What'd you learn from it? I don't know. Okay. Would you do it again? She's like, it was the most horrifying experience of my entire life. And I'm thinking, your marketing campaign kind of sucks. I have no interest in this at all. Universe has a funny way of working with us, right? So I went to a ceremony that was going to be the traditional DMT. I was like, maybe the Wood Elves will have some secrets for me. Let's go down that rabbit hole. I remember showing up, meeting this beautiful little Spanish lady that I'm great friends with today. Her name was Mirna. And I'm like, I'm here for the DMT. She's like, we don't have any more. We just have Bufo. And I was like, damn it. And I was like, well, I don't want Bufo. I don't want Bufo. I want DMT. She's looked up at me and she goes, you need Bufo. And I was like, she's reading this. She's reading this Westerner, right? Then I'm like, I paid money. I came with rental car. I give you money. I get set experience. What's happening here? She wasn't having it. She's like, you're doing Bufo. And then just as she said that, a man in the background screamed at the top of his lungs, bloody murder, which is a man in the process of his experience. So even more so, I'm like, what are we doing? I was a much bigger guy then. Again, I was tied into my physical form. I cared about it. I was a little bit egoic with it. So I was a pretty big frame. I sat down. I was surrounded by, it looked like a group of Abercrombie and Finch models, all jacked guys, no shirts on, like, do it. I'm like, what the hell is happening? I didn't realize later that they had this amount of people because the physical experience under the medicine could be so extreme that they brought in the whole crew, thinking I was going to be a work. I actually laid there like a little Buddha, shockingly. Came out of the ceremony, but the initial part of the ceremony, the inhalation. So I want to touch through that. This inhalation process. Well, first off, you notice I didn't talk about any medical intake. That was non-existent, right? Are you on SSRIs? Do you have blood pressure medications? Do you have a history of manic depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, any of these? Do you have anything that would prevent you from safely stepping into this space? That was never asked. It was, you're here for Bufo, we're doing this. So let's just start there, and I mean that with compassion. That is also the way that a lot of folks are still facilitating, right? That to me is just completely inappropriate. Thank you. Most folks that are coming to this medicine are folks that are working or dealing with some level of mental health. It's important to bring in the therapist, to work with the therapist, to have multiple conversations, to prepare. before we step into a safe ceremony. But my ceremony was me sitting on the dirt. 15 seconds after the inhalation, I watched the shaman start fading away, and this little egoic thought in my brain said, "Oh, you're dead. You should be in an emergency room right now." That is the truth. I'll never forget it. And this little angelic conscious voice said, "Nah, just die to this." And literally, I just died. I remember coming to, again, surrounded by this herd of people, telling me I needed to do another dose. I gotta be honest, I've never been scared in my life that much. I was just like, what? Am I okay? Like, I didn't even know if I was okay. Let me, who here has done, and this is personal, you don't have to share. If you'd like to share, that'd be great. Who here has done a full dose of 5-MEO DMT? All right, kind of horrifying, right? So coming out of the experience, they're shoving another one. You got to do it again. You got to do it again. And I'm asking literally, is it going to kill me? Like, I wasn't sure it was even safe to do it. What I also realized then, that regardless of the size of my frame, regardless of the MMA that I was doing, I was this huge person full of fear, living a life of fear, but it created a frame around that fear, right? Like a lot of us do as a defense. I allowed that peer pressure to get to me. I was like, okay, knowing you're likely going to die. Did it again, came out of the medicine, literally barely out of the medicine. And the thought was, hey, we got other people here. We're going to have to move you over to this tapestry. Thank you for coming. And I remember laying there, and the first thought to my mind was, what just happened? Like, literally, what just happened to you? And the next thought was, be careful who you let serve this to you. This is the most serious medicine I've ever been a part of. And I've tried just about most things in that area. Nothing was like that. Process like, oh, and I'll take a step back because, again, I got about 10 minutes here and I want to talk about things from safety standpoint because that's the point of this conversation. That first part of the experience, trigger warning, all right? You are offline. If you're taking a full dose of this medicine, the default mode network is shut down. You are not physically present, okay? This is where physical safety is a must. Again, I'm a big guy. I would never serve this alone, right? You have to have helpers. I've had a 120-pound female where it took 4 of us to keep them safe, right? Folks do not know what they're doing with their physical body. This is my biggest concern of the medicine. Anybody can light the pipe, right? I call them pipe lighters. People have this experience like, I could do that. I could train a monkey with a banana to put heat under something, right? It's not a skill set. It's not a skill set. The skill set is keeping people safe, right? And not creating more trauma. And I think the more facilitators that do this medicine and see the egoic part of what we do as facilitators and start grinding that down, I think the better off we would all be. And I mean that with compassion. But that space is the safe space. So if you are looking to have this experience, men and women, but specifically women as I'm a male, if I was a female and I was going into this space, I would not go alone. Right? 3 of the last folks that we worked with, again, trigger warning, are folks that have had some sort of traumatic event happen in the space. I think we could imagine, right? It is happening because those folks are not present. So if you're a female or a male, I'd recommend going with a friend. Anybody that would not allow you to have a witness is not somebody worth serving medicine. Thank you. Number 2, they should have some help. And number 3, they should allow you to videotape the experience or have a videotape of the experience. We videotape it. I didn't do this for years. But again, anybody that's been in the space, anybody that's watched the films, clothes can come off. It is the most powerful, energetic experience a human could have. You don't know what's going to happen. That's why I think it's such an intimate space and an intimate setting. But having a video documentation of what happened so folks can see that they were safe the whole time, that you weren't a participant in anything that may happen, is important. Okay, it's important, and it creates the setting for this type of situation to happen, for the ceremony to happen. And again, I can't stress enough that somatic aspect of that. Regardless of what they're doing in that space, it needs to happen. It needs to happen. And some folks do need it to happen again. Right? This concept of non-dual energetic therapy pushed by Dr. Martin Ball, I'm a proponent of it, right? The body is an energy system. Everything is stored in our body. We know this already, right? To turn that brain off for a minute and to allow that body to process it is vital. And what's happening, and again, and we've all talked about the energies, the chakras, the energy center. This is different. One of my friends was talking about Wachuma the other day, and he said it has the ability to find those parts of our body that the other medicines aren't finding. This is it. This is it, right? The analogy I use, my wife, beautiful, long, curly hair, maybe a gray hair in there or two. Not saying anything, honey, right? Showers, clogging up the drain. So the bathroom, the shower in our house, the hair starts clogging up. It's like we got a squirrel in there or something. It's clogged, right? So if you can imagine, the water flow is the energy circuit. The 5-MEO is like liquid plumber. Okay, pouring that down, it starts breaking up this, allowing the water to flow a little bit more smoothly. That's the energy. So sometimes it takes a couple doses of that to completely unlock those clogs. But that's what's happening to people. I can't tell you how many times folks, and it happened to me, specifically me, but folks all the time come in, no ability to meditate. Mindfulness is something that they're completely struggling with. I meditated for years. I'm like, I don't really quite understand this. Instantly, when they have that somatic release and come back online. I remember standing at this kitchen sink to my wife, and I was like, I got to go downstairs. She's like, what are you going to do? I'm going to go meditate. What? I'm like, I know, right? You feel called to do it. And to me, it's because you've had this connection. You've had this moment with God, source, consciousness, whatever feels right for you. And you want it again. You want to go back. And to me, the idea of utilizing this medicine was to create that neural net where going back home was easy. And I was able to do that through meditation. And that's one of the powers of this. Thank you. When folks start coming back online, again, that process of being offline is about 5 to 15 minutes, and then they come back online. This is where this, an emotional wave usually comes over people. You just felt, to me, I felt like, what just happened? You have this sense of you that you were somewhere, that maybe you were in the presence of God. You feel that you were just washed in this bath of unconditional love. And to me, I just remember bawling. Probably cry again. Been crying ever since, right? It just broke me open. And I remember just bawling. And the next day I went back. We did a group. It was 40 people. I was the biggest guy in the group. I was the last one, of course. And I remember coming out of the medicine and just bawling, just full of tears. And that little voice again was like, oh boy, you're the one. You're in this circle of people crying. And this angelic consciousness, thank you, consciousness, was like, no, allow this. This is what you need to heal. It changed everything. I probably cried for 30 minutes. And now folks that we serve, especially the men that I work with, there is nothing more beautiful to me, right? I love y'all, but there is nothing more beautiful to me than to hold a man's hand as he's coming out of this medicine and him to have that full emotional, energetic release for some of us for the first time in our entire lives. And to witness and to feel the healing that comes with that, I can't express it. That's how my life was changed. This gentleman held my hand. I was coming out of the medicine. My first thought was, does he hold my hand? And then immediately was like, thank you. Thank you. I would have never asked for that, but I needed that, right? And I find other people need that too. And that's the beauty and the power of this medicine. I've only got a couple minutes, so I don't want to speed through this. I don't even like saying that, but I'm going to try to talk quickly through the integration aspect of this. But I'd love way more time to talk about this at some stage. The integration to me begins with the somatic experience, right? We are going back to homeostasis. We are healing without even knowing it's happening. That's just beautiful to me. But it's not like a typical integration. Again, most folks don't even know what happened. What happened to me? Well, we got to dial that in first, right? So to me, it's first helping folks land the experience. What happened? And a lot of the clues we're looking for are very subtle. For me, as I was driving home, somebody cut me off. In the past, when they cut me off, my body would get anxious. And then, boom, I labeled that as I was mad, jerk, boom, whatever the label may be. The next day, I remember driving, person cut me off. My body got anxious again. But there was this pause in the programming that I talk about all the time. The pause in the programming. The consciousness said, are you angry? Or is your body just having a physical reaction to this stimulus? Huh. That's a programmed reaction. When that happens, my body does this, my brain labels X. That's what was happening. That pause in the programming, that to me is how this medicine could be used. This, I hate to call the ego the devil because it's not, but the analogy is the devil and angel on a shoulder, right? The devil would always pop out, that guy's doing this. But now this voice was louder, stronger, more prominent. Is he? Is he? Or is that how you're interpreting the situation based on your ego? So we're talking about egoic liberation. There is no more powerful medicine for that, in my personal opinion, because there's no medicine that can elicit an ego death more consistently. This near-death experience is one with consciousness. I am everything. How will that change the world, guys? Right? We're in this day and age. I got a 5.5-year-old daughter. I'm horrified for it. We're in this world now where everybody needs to be extraordinary, right? How many followers do I have? Am I extraordinary? Does everybody see me? It's like, why aren't we trying to be extraordinary, right? I want to be a better husband and father. That's it, right? I want to be a better friend. I want to be a better person. And so this medicine to me steps above the ego and allows us to look down on how we are operating and how we are showing up in this world. For many of us, the first time, for me, the first time, and be able to see it for what it is, the truth, right? And then what you do with that truth is up to you. But to me, I just wanted the due diligence done. I wanted to see it so I can make a conscious decision, a conscious decision. And so I apologize to all the people when I was not making a conscious decision. I apologize for all the decisions that happened in that programmed form. But now I know better. Now we all know better from this conversation, hopefully, and we do better. I've got 20 seconds, so I'm going to read through some closing remarks just here briefly. As more and more people become aware of this medicine, I find it's important to have more dialogue like we did today, to share more information, to share better practices. Come on, facilitators. Like, why do we have to pretend like we're special? Right? I'm just exhausted with that. I am not special. People ask me all the time, what are you, a healer or a I'm just Kirby. That's it. I'm just it. I'm trying to get rid of all that crap, right? I'm not trying to take more of it on. Like, why do we need more labels, more roles, more energetic shit that we're taking into the space, man? I'm all set. I'm just Kirby, and I'm here to advocate for the safe use of this medicine for you guys. It saved my life. That means it saved my wife's life, my daughter's life, my son's life, my friend's life. It can save lives. It's important medicine. We need to know more about it. It needs to be done safely. That's where I'll stop. I appreciate you having me today, and thank you for listening.